Welcome to the CIRCO Academy. In this presentation, we're going to explain to you the design framework on products that flow. This is made in a home recording because we're in a COVID situation at the moment, but hopefully we can inspire you and transfer the information on design framework to you in this way. Originally, we used the Products That Last framework. This is the result of a 3-year study by Professor Connie den Bakker of the Technical University in Delft, and it gives substance to the concept of circular design. And the starting point was longer than average use of a product. So how can you extend the use of a product? And therefore, they formulated 5 circular business models and 6 circular design strategies. And these you can find in this orange book called Products That Last. Recently, one of our trainers, Siem Hafmans, formulated another book called Products That Flow. And that gives substance to the concept of circular design with a focus on fast-moving consumer goods. So goods that are developed and designed for a short usage and have a relatively low value after usage. And for this, he formulated 4 business opportunities that help you to organize the flow of the products and 5 circular design strategies. And in this presentation, we will go more in depth on these business opportunities and circular design strategies that were presented in the Products That Flow book. We previously introduced to you the concept of value destruction. So here you see the value hill with the value that is added on the left side of the hill, then the usage phase, and then after use, the value of the product or the components or the material is destroyed rapidly. This is valid for products that last, as you see here. For products that last, there is the ambition to reuse the product at the highest level in the R hierarchy. So by longer use, repairing and maintaining it, reuse or redistribution of the product, or maybe refurbish and remanufacture the product. And so the design questions are: why is the user discarding the product or the packaging? How can the product be used longer and more intensive? And how can the product be used again? However, these are not very relevant questions when you look at the products that flow, because those products do not have a very high value, and so they are better to recycle. And this is where the whole concept of design for recycling comes in, which is then formulated in the Products That Flow framework. And so the design questions for this Products That Flow are reuse of the products and packaging in the refund or pull system, or optimizing the system for take-back and recycling. We first start with an explanation on the business models of the Products That Last framework. You might argue why? Well, that's because even in Products That Flow, it's a sensible thing to look first if you can use the packaging and the content for a longer period of time. And maybe the Products That Last business models can help you with that. But we will now explain that by using packaging and fast-moving consumer goods examples. So here you see the 5 business models, and they are here plotted in a hierarchy. So with first the classical long life, you deliver a product with some additional circular elements in it. And when you go down the hierarchy, you see the performance model, in which you basically deliver a service and the product is just an enabler to deliver that service. Maybe a little bit vague now, but if we explain the business models, it will probably become clear to you how this works. We first look at the classical long life. And this is a very nice design example from the Netherlands. It's called Dopper. And when is it relevant? When the product has a very long technical lifetime. And that's how they designed the Dopper. So this is a very robust product in which you can put water and transport it to the place where you want to drink this water. And so what is the revenue model for this Dopper? There is a high margin at the transaction moment because people like the product and are willing to pay a high margin for it and to play a sustainable role with it. And why is it sustainable? Because it can be used often more and more times than, for example, a plastic cup. That is the alternative for this. What is very important to note is that when the product is discarded in a premature phase, then you don't have the ecological benefits of using this long life product. Then we go to the second business model, the hybrid model. In the hybrid model, there's always a combination between a machine and a consumable, like here with the Nespresso. So the machine is often at no margin sold to a consumer, and then the margin is made by the consumables that are sold on a periodical basis. And so we all know that Nespresso has good margins. Why is this sustainable? Why not necessarily? It depends on how you design and organize the whole flow for the consumable. For instance, Nespresso has a recycling system for the cups and is trying to find a good new solution for the materials that come out of the cups and to reuse the coffee. So in that case, it can be sustainable, but that's very important when you look at the hybrid model. The third model is the gap exploiter. This is a very interesting model, and you see that we are now coming closer to service provisioning. In a gap exploiter, companies try to make use of the fact that there is still value in a product after the first user stops with using the product. So they try to exploit that gap in value. There are multiple variants for this model. So you can repair a product, you can resell the whole product, or you can get out the materials, recover them, and bring them back into another value chain. An example of the repair service is this pallet repair service. So when is this valid? When the product is not longer used due to a component failure. So when something breaks down in this pallet. And where is revenue? It's coming from repair, maybe from the spare parts, but also because the one that is using the product will come to you in order to make it repair, but maybe it's beyond repair and you can sell a new product. Why is it sustainable? Because by repairing your product, you prolong the product lifetime. Another variant of the gap exploiter is material recycling in an open loop. So when is it relevant? When there are still valuable parts or materials at the end of use of the product, which is the case for plastic packaging, which is here in the example of Plastic Hero in the Netherlands. So what is the revenue model? So that's income from an EPR system. So the open loop means that there is an EPR system in place that is then financing the collection and the return of the materials. The materials are sorted and they are sold as material for new usage. Why is it sustainable? Because instead of bringing the material to incineration or to landfill, you bring it back for an upcycling or a recycling perspective. Now we come to the access model. And here you see an example of an access model. So when is this relevant? When the occupation or the usage rate of the product is relatively low. And if you can share the product with multiple users, that the capitalization of the product will go up. And so what you see here is a pool of trays that is used in supermarkets. And this is provided by an external party called CBL. What they do, they make these crates and these trays available, and they get an income for every time that it is used. And they collect it and they distribute it to the supermarkets and the transportation companies that are using these products. Why is it sustainable? Because there is a much higher utilization of the energy and the materials that are in the product, but also because you don't need single-use packaging or secondary packaging material. So you need less products. One of the things to note is that you have to invest in this infrastructure of trades and of other things. So you need a lot of cash to set this system up. Now we come to the last one, to the performance model. And what you see is that in the hierarchy, we're really back to a service. So the product is only enabling to deliver that service. Well, how does that work? We can see it in this example. So instead of packaging the product, you can also bring food, which is this case in India, to people that are at the working place. And so the service is that you distribute the food instead of packaging it and let the people bring it themselves. So what is the revenue model? You deliver the service and you get also a fee for that deliverance. Why is it circular? Because the crates that are using here, you bring them back, you clean them and you reuse them. And maybe also by bringing the food, you can better manage the food waste. If you have a system like this, your entire system changes because you have to invest in the products that bring the food to the people. You need people that distribute the food and you have to clean everything after usage. So there is a lot of service that has to be delivered and has to be organized. So these are the business models and they can help you for the value retention. So it's about the material selection and efficiency on the left-hand side, but it's also then about the business models that help you to close the loops on the right-hand side. So for repair and maintenance, there are the classical long life, the repair service, and the hybrid products. For the reuse and the redistribution, the refurbishment and the remanufacturing, you have the second-hand trader. And for recycling, you have the recovery provider. So you see there is a business model for every loop that you want to close. And the service models, they even reach over all the cycles, because when you are an access provider or performance provider, then you stay the owner of the product and you have an interest to have that product used for as long as possible, to redistribute it after the first usage and to have a good solution for recycling, because the value is yours and you want to optimize on that. These were the business models that are part of the Product That Lasts book. Now we're going to look at the design strategies in Products That Flow. And you see there are 4 of them, and one to start with is rethink. The reduce, recycle and renew, they look on how you can optimize the current product packaging system. So it's an intervention on a product level. If you look at rethink and reuse, you're really going to look at the fundamental use of the product packaging concepts. We will explain this now in this presentation. The first design strategy is on rethink. And you're fundamentally going to look if you can get rid of the packaging. So how can you come to a circular system? When is it applicable? When the current linear system is really under pressure, either by legislation or maybe because consumers don't want to use packaging anymore. And you're really going to look if you can change the system entirely. And so that is what Aosta did. So instead of using plastic packaging for this fruit product, they use laser marking to put the information that is necessary on the product. And they don't need any packaging anymore, and they can still distribute the content. So that is a good example of rethinking everything that has to do with the packaging and the content. Another example is this supermarket, where they don't use any packaging anymore. So the same reasons as for the rethink in the previous example, but now a different solution. And so you see in a lot of countries coming up this packaging-less supermarkets. The second design strategy is on reuse. So instead of single use of packaging, you try to come to multiple use. And so when is it applicable? When the technical lifespan is not fully used and you can reuse the product. And probably you have to redesign the packaging. So you have to incorporate design elements that make the packaging more durable, but also that has incentives in it for the consumer and other players in the value chain to really reuse the product. So to send it back and reuse it. So that's the example of repack, that is packaging for e-commerce. And people can send this packaging after use back to the provider with or without content. And so what do? You try to prolong the life expectancy of the product by altering the whole system. Another example of reuse is Osaka. A growing number of people is not content with all the material they throw away when they have food delivery. So CIRCO has a solution with reusable package for food. So this is a special material that is more robust and easy to clean. So after you have used the food, you can clean it and reuse this packaging. Another example is the refill system. So the container stays at the consumer, and by post you send a refill that the consumer can put himself in the container. So instead of sending the whole packaging and reusing the whole packaging, you only have to refill to distribute, and you need much less packaging for that. The second design strategy is on reduce. So you accept that you have packaging that you use only once to bring your content to the user. But you're going to look if you can make a packaging with less material and maybe also with less weight. So that is what Unilever did for this bottle. They used a microcellular material in one of the layers that uses less material because there is more air in it and also has a lower weight. So this is also optimizing the logistical process. So what is the design challenge? You have to find an optimum between material reduction and maybe also then benefits in logistics, but also to prevent from product loss due to product failure. Another example is this Puma box or bag, what should I say? So this is the clever little bag. And what you see is that the bag and the box are combined into one packaging system. So you only need one, which is reduction, both in material, but also in the amounts of products that you have to bring to the market. The third design strategy is on recycling. So this is on products that are in the technical sphere. And there are two sides you have to look at. So first is on the end of usage situation. So how can you optimize for recycling? And if you look at the sleeve here, it's not stick to the product, but you can easily take it off the product. So you can separate the plastic of the bottle and the paper of the sleeve. So that is one side of it. The other side is when you start making the product, and can you, for instance, use recycled plastics? And so that is what SAPI is doing, because about 90% of the plastics is recycled plastics. Another example of design for recycling is EcoVer. You might say this is a little bit a gimmick because the plastic collection is by fishing in the Amsterdam canals. But if you look at the design for recycling, you can see that the cap and the bottle are made of the same material, and that also the sleeve is then put on the bottle in a very sophisticated way so that you can easily separate it. The last design strategy is on renew, and now we are in the bio cycle. So here you try to use biomaterials instead of materials that are then constructed out of fossil fuel, for instance. And here you also can look at the end-of-life solution. So maybe you can make the material compostable. There are heavy discussions on compostable material, because also for compostable material you often need a separated collection system. And where you don't have it, there are two results can be. One is that you contaminate the other recycle streams, or that people just throw away the product packaging and it will not compose itself in the environment. So this is a debate, and so you have to look carefully on how the recycling system is structured in your country, if this is a sensible strategy to follow. These were all the design strategies. And when you look at it, then you have reuse, and that is looking at the product that lasts solution. So can you reuse the packaging so that you can reuse it and refill, deposit, or maybe a remanufacturing system? The other design strategies are then looking at optimizing for recycling. So can you use recycled materials, or can you optimize the product usage and the construction so that recycling is more effective? Reduce is on looking at the packaging itself. So can you use less material and also optimize the logistic process? Now presented to you the products that last business models and the product that flow design strategies. And now we're going to look how you can use them. And success is in a combination. So there is no good or bad or winning combination. You have to look at the market structure, your customer needs, but also the ambitions of your company. And that's what we're going to explain now by two examples. So the first example is the dopper. So the dopper is used to carry water to the place where you want to drink it. And the dopper choose for the classical long life model, and the design strategies that they use are on attachment and trust and on durability on the one hand side and on reuse on the other hand, because you reuse the dopper often and often. Another product is this Bar-le-Duc bottle. So Bar-le-Duc accepts the fact that you can only use once this product. And then you look at the business model of the gap exploiter recovery, and they optimize the product for recycling by using recycled material and design the product in such a way that it's also optimized for recycling again. So what you see are two different designs and business model combinations to bring water to the place where the user wants to consume it. And so that's also valid for your product where you're going to work on during the track. So there's no good or bad, but we are going to explore what can the business models do for you and what can the design models do for you, and how do you come to a combination that fits your specific circumstances. I'm looking forward to do that with you. Thank you very much.